Hi, my name is Karen Einstein. I'm here with IPNE.org, the Independent Publishers of New England, and we've got two wonderful experts here on our Ask the Experts broadcast. They're Paul Parisi and Manny Motto of the HF Group. The HF Group is a brilliant bookbinding company in Charleston, Massachusetts, and I'll let Paul introduce a little bit more about it. It's just incredible. If you have a chance to work with them, I highly recommend it. They're fantastic people to work for, and the building itself is just fascinating. They have antique printing presses, all kinds of talented people involved in the printing bookbinding industry, completely modern presses. A really wonderful group of people. Okay,
Paul
so.
Is also one of our...
Well, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today. HF Group Acme Binding has a long history. We actually claim a birth year of 1821, and we today have plants in 5 states. We're in Massachusetts, New York, Ohio, Indiana, and North Carolina. And we are a company which is committed to books, and we love everything about the book business. So we're a book manufacturer in many different areas. I'll tell you briefly. We're a trade binder. We do very high-end art books and books of all types for publishers and authors and clients of every type. We're a library binder. We bind for libraries across the United States in all 50 states with a specialty, again, in high-quality work. We're a digital printer. We do printing and binding of books in quantities as small as 1 and as large as thousands. So we're a full-service print-on-demand operation, as well as a short-run and longer-run print and bind facility. Our Boston plant, I should also mention too, we have a conservation division in North Carolina, which does very high-end conservation, including things like the Magna Carta and the Declaration of Independence. And we have a hand bindery in Boston, formerly the Harcourt Bindery, where we do really beautiful things in leather and really delicious types of productions. So if you're ever in the Boston area, we're actually on 100 Cambridge Street in Charlestown, right near Sullivan Square. We have a 100,000 square foot facility stuffed with machinery and people all making books. So it's my pleasure to be here today. And let me introduce Manny Motto. Manny runs our print-on-demand operation, and also he's very heavily involved in our edition binding and trade binding. So Manny? Manny, we're not hearing you.
Manny, could you try the mute again to see if you're muted? Let's see.
You could tell if he's muted.
Okay, he doesn't have a mute on his.
Yeah. He's not muted. I think you have to go up to the top, Manny, and identify a microphone. It's hard for me to show you.
Go up to the top of the screen, and in the middle of the screen, a short thing will come up that.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, great. Fantastic, Manny.
All right.
Wonderful. Okay, so, Manny Motto.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Sorry for the technical difficulties this morning. My name is Manny. I've been working at HF Group Acme Binding since 2002. Started when I was 22 years old. By chance, I ended up working here. It's been a great 14 years now. Sorry, and we do a little of everything. I try to get involved in as much as I can because I'm not a fan of monotonous. And we do so many different things here throughout the day, and so many different types of equipment and weird things that you might never think you might need in a binding, but you do. So it's always fun. It's always different. So. Paul said pretty much everything that we do, so I don't want to repeat myself on any of that stuff. But turn it back over to Karen.
Okay, thanks, Manny.
You're welcome.
So, Paul, I was wondering if you could talk us through just a brief review of what a typical project would be from, you get the call from the client to kind of the process and the book leaves the facility.
Sure. Well, it can be quite different depending on who the client is and what the scope of the project is. So oftentimes, initially, the first conversation has to do with what is it that the client wants from us. Are you doing a hardcover book, a softcover book, anything special about the production of that order? Do you need help in getting your print files ready to deliver to us a print-ready PDF? Are you looking for prices? Usually people are. They want to know what the price of the project will be and the delivery time. So there's a number of questions we have to get answered. Is it color? Is it black? What trim size do you have? There's a pretty long dialogue of questions before we actually get down to how will we actually do it.
All right, that sounds, a lot of things that I hadn't thought of before. And then once you do get the information from the client, what kind of is the next step? Say it's a soft cover 300-page novel, for example.
Sure. So we would ask to get the print files from them, and oftentimes the first step would be we would produce a print proof. So we'd print the pages, we'd print the cover, we send it to the client for approval. In some cases, if it's a rerun, a book has been done before, we don't go through that step. But if it's a print on demand where there's just one book being done, of course, there's no point in doing a proof because you're only getting one. But the first step generally is a proof and approval, and it's very surprising to me. But oftentimes people spend a lot of time creating their work. They see it on screen and they love it. They send it to us. We print the paper proof. They get that paper proof back, and they see mistakes. So it's usually a good thing to carefully inspect what you have before you send it to the binder, because almost every book has a mistake in it somewhere.
I would imagine at least one. I know I've had books printed, and when they came to me, I just said, "How did I miss this?" Just glaring at me from the pages. And Manny, you mentioned that you like to have things kind of ongoing challenges. And what are some of the more surprising things that you've run into?
When it comes to the customers, it's literally a lot of the times it ends up being they want something that can't always be made. Sometimes it comes up, they want to use something different in their binding process, whether it be a metal sheet that they want to include in their binding. You can't really always do that, but every now and then it's always different ways of trying to get things done. We had a project for the Navy SEALs where there was a metal inlay that had to go on the cover, but the metal inlay was also a 1/4 inch thick, so we had to figure out a way to turn that into the binding and not make it protrude too much past the cover. So just little things like that we try to knock our heads together, figure out how we can get it done.
See, now that's something I would have never imagined in my wildest dreams to ever happen. So that is actually a perfect example of something really surprising. And Paul, what are some of the more typical confusions that people have when they start working with you? I noticed that one of the questions someone sent in is, how do you FTP a file? What does FTP a file mean? And how do you do it?
FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol.
Okay.
And it's basically software that moves big documents from point A to point B. So we have an FTP site, and people who are familiar with FTP can move their files over to us. Some people who are a little bit more challenged with technology, we use Dropbox or more conventional tools. And some people, if their files aren't so big, they can just email them to us. We're actually bringing up a new site right now. It's called Insight. It's a Kodak tool. It's part of a very complex software that all of the major printers use called Printergy and Insight. And it'll be a web portal where clients can actually move files over to us, kind of drag and drop type technology. But that'll be probably another month or so before it's breathing.
Wow, that's fascinating. And in what areas do you find, or are there any particular areas where bookbinding is radically changing the most right now? Or is it kind of changing in every area? I mean, you just mentioned this.
I think it's changing mostly because the audience of publishers who have a big stake in the whole food chain of book manufacturing, they're all trying to reduce their inventories and have less books that get returned and have fewer books that never sell. So people are all going to shorter run production, so they only produce what they need, and so more just-in-time manufacturing. Our life gets more complicated all the time because we're doing more smaller orders versus fewer larger orders, and so we're printing and then reprinting and then reprinting again versus doing a big run and going into a warehouse.
I had a question too related to that. Mm-hmm. This is Charlotte Pierce. I recently was trying to set up a file on Lightning Source, the 9 by 11 children's book that you guys are doing, and I just wanted to have it there as a, another backup so that people could buy it. It's slightly higher per copy price, but I went to the specs and to put in the size of the book, and they don't have 9 by 11. They have 8.5 by 11, or 8.5 by 11.69 or something. So do you run into that? Or, I mean, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, one of the reasons why people come to us is that we'll use different papers and any trim size, and we can do things that many people can't do or won't do. And it's really our trademark is that we're very flexible and accommodating, and most people tell us that our quality is better. So we really our goal is to make it possible for you to produce the book that you want versus the book that isn't quite what you want, but it's all you can get.
And how do you handle print on demand? I mean, is that you don't ship from like the Lightning Source Amazon relationship, do you?
We have some clients where we have a digital front end, and their system communicates to our system, and we produce books and ship for them. But you have to have a steady business in order for that to really be worth the setup overhead expenses. But it's certainly something we do every day.
And Paul, I was just thinking in that incredible tour that you gave of your plant, which was a couple of hours, and I think it could have gone on for 20, because there was just so much to your facility. I was really amazed. But I remember one of the things that struck me was you mentioned that oftentimes you're adapting machines, or you're coming up with new plans to change what the machines can do. And I was wondering if you could give us an example of kind of a
yeah. The Boston facility is a 100,000 square foot plant, and we actually have 3 plants that are 100,000 square feet, and a couple others that are around 50,000. So book manufacturing is a lot more complicated than most people ever in their wildest dreams would guess. So it takes a lot of machinery and a lot of skilled people in order to produce the products that we do every day. But you have a client. We have a client. The University of Pennsylvania had a project they wanted to do, and they had a sort of a creative design concept they wanted, which was they wanted to have boards mounted to the front and back of the sewn book block. They wanted the spine glued, and then they wanted the book trimmed. That was the whole binding. So normally when you apply glue to the back of a book, you put something over it so that it doesn't make a mess out of everything else. And in this case, they just wanted the glue on the spine, and they wanted the exposed structure of the Smythe sewing to be visible to the person using the book. So it took some thinking and some engineering, but we were able to figure out a way to do it. But the best example of that is that we got a call back in 2002 from a guy running the MIT Media Lab, and he wanted us to produce a book that was 5 feet tall and weighed 133 pounds. And we figured out a way to do that. So we actually have a Guinness record for the world's largest published book. We produced 100 of these monsters. And it was a lot of fun doing it, but it was definitely a challenge.
I remember the photography is beautiful and the resolution is incredible. I mean, for something that large.
Yeah, that was one of the challenges, because this book was just many terabytes large. This was in 2002. The bandwidth of the pipes that we had to push the data through, and the technology wasn't quite as good as it is today. So this took 24 hours to print this book, because it was such a big file and such a physically big and many-page book. So if you had a glitch anywhere during that 24-hour period, then you had to start over again, because the book was printed on 400 feet of continuous paper. Wow. So it was a project, and it was not a simple one.
Okay, thanks. And getting back to Manny, what would you say? What's a typical day for you? If you have one, yeah. If you have one.
Typical days, it's hard. It's hard for me. I mean, starts at 6 in the morning. Go through around the building, see what's going on for the day, see what I need to respond to emails. Hopefully if I can make it up to my desk by 7:30, it's a good thing. And then from that point on, my day goes on through different pardon me, through different issues throughout the day, whether it be what materials we need to order, what materials have been some type of issue, whether my supplier did something incorrectly, or whether we weren't told of something correctly. It varies. So my days can go from one extreme to another, where I'm running through the whole facility, or I'm actually at my desk being able to, communicate with customers, talking about projects, trying to figure out the best way to produce them, best way to lay them out, or when it comes to, setting up their files, trying to help them out in that aspect.
Okay, great. And what would you recommend to someone who's new, who's publishing their first or their second book, or who's new with HF Group, to in order to kind of facilitate the process so that the communication between you and the customer goes really smoothly?
The best bet is try to get everything ahead of time to know what exactly they're doing. That way you can we and them can advise their customer on how to set up their file, what we're going to be looking for from the file, whether it be bleeds, layout respect, especially like how Charlotte was talking about the trim sizes. They might set up their trim size for an 8.5, 11, but they're not putting into consideration they need to include bleeds on that if there are any bleeds, or if there aren't any bleeds, are where they want it to be one way, shape, or form something different, or where they're talking about a portrait book or a landscape book. All those configurations matter. And also, if they ever need any help with their design work, I like to provide them with a cover wrap layout or a soft cover layout. That way they can have all that before they start doing their layout work, and they can just go from there instead of, oh no, I need a layout, and then we're behind the 8 ball at that point, especially when it comes to the time-sensitive materials.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I'd like to add is that one of the things that many people don't understand is the concept of bleed. If you want a book which is 6x9, you can't give us a print file which is 6x9, because we actually have to trim the book, after it's printed, and you need something to cut away to get to the final size. So the page design needs to allow, usually it's 1/8 of an inch, sometimes people give us 1/4 of an inch, but it needs to be a minimum of 1/8 of an inch of trim off of the color area, if you have a color book. If it's just a textbook with white margin all around it, then bleed doesn't apply. But if you have any images or design which is going beyond the edge of the trim area, then you need to give us more than what you want as a final trim size. So again, a 6x9 book normally would come to us as 9 1/4 by 6 1/8, 9 1/4 tall and 6 1/8 wide, and then we would trim 1/8 of an inch from the 3 sides and give you a final book. And if you have things like crossovers, crossover is a page which carries from the say page 2 on the left side to page 3 on the right side. You need to have adjustments in the gutter so that things cross over and line up correctly.
Oh, okay. That leads me to another question that someone wrote in, and that is, what is gutter creep?
Well, gutter creep is really when you are doing a saddle stitch book, a book which is stapled rather than adhesive bound or sewn, and because you have many pages stacking on top of one another, or the word they use is nesting. So imagine you have one folded piece of paper, which we call a 4-page, and then you put many of them together, and then you put a staple through it. Well, as you go further and further from the center, your gutter creeps away from center.
I see. All right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, great. And what are some of the more typical misunderstandings and problems that you run into that you'd like people to know about so that they can avoid them?
This is the, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is the sheet that a publisher would fill out at HF Group with all the stuff. This is one I did for a book of mine. Go ahead.
Okay. No, Charlotte, can you comment on it a little bit more and tell us a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's, it gives them a lot of information. It's a little bit non-user friendly. I didn't know what some of the terms were. I didn't know if I had everything that they needed. And, so, I'd be happy to make some more specific comments, but it did give, I guess, Manny, give you what you needed to make the quote, right?
It did. If anything, if I was missing anything, I could always fill it in on my end based on, what we need and what we would expect from you guys. Mm-hmm. But if anything seemed out of the ordinary, I definitely would have mentioned it to you.
Okay. And then I should say that when we changed the page count, you guys were really right on top of it, and you know, I don't think it. I mean, it did change the cost a little bit, but not, you know, not a whole lot.
Well, that's actually a good point. What are the for either of you? What are the cost surprises that surprise people the most, and they end up saying like, "What? Why does it cost that much?" I mean, are there any areas of the whole bookbinding process that people are you might want to warn them about before they get involved, so they can budget?
Well, the most cost, the bigger cost ends up being when a book size is a big book size.
Okay.
What I mean by book size, like when they come and they say, I want a 14-inch book by 11-inch book, that takes up a lot of paper on a printing press. It takes up a lot of binding, and when it comes to that size, most of the equipment in the country is all set up for a maximum of a 12-inch, not even a 12-inch, an 11 7/8 wide, pardon me, wide face trim. So a lot of that stuff has to go through handwork, through semi-automated equipment. So it makes it more expensive, and that's where some of the surprise costs come from. That customer says, "Oh, that's way too expensive. Why is it so much expensive?"
All right, that makes sense.
Sometimes if you go just a little bit smaller, the price drops a lot. I think of it in terms of the printing, because most printing is driven around what they call a click as a chargeable event in a printing press. So a click is basically 8.5 by 11. It's not exactly true in every case, depending on the press you have, but let's just use that as an example. So if you have a book which is 9 by 11, you're going to have 2 clicks for that book instead of 1. So your price doubles just by going a little bit bigger. So even though we can do the bigger sizes, you sometimes will end up paying for it. And that's, again, that your particular dimensions of your book, you should always ask us to quote it, and then we'll tell you if that's going to be over a borderline, and if you can just go slightly smaller and save a lot of money. Same thing is true with
I'm sorry.
No, Charlotte, yeah.
Oh, that 9 by 11 book is, I mean, what would that be significantly less for a hardcover if it were a smaller size?
You'd probably have to go to like a 6.5 by 9, 6.5 width-wise, by probably a 9.5 height-wise, for it to be a significant price difference.
Okay.
All right. Oh, wow, interesting. And what percentage of the books that you produce are kind of independent authors and publishers attempting to get their books out into the market?
Well, honestly, the majority of our work is for the major publishers. That's because we're a pretty big factory and we produce millions of books a year.
Right.
The major publishers have most of the business.
Right.
But we work with a lot of independent publishers and independent authors, and some of them actually do a lot of books. So it really is specific to what your content is and what the market for that content is. And if you have a good idea and a good subject and you get going, then your business can really be quite large. We have one man who we've been working with now for it's over 10 years, and he started off doing very small quantities very infrequently. Now he's printing with us every month, and his quantities keep growing like crazy.
Wow, brilliant.
Hopefully we'll send some more IPNE members to you. We have about 5 or so more minutes. Are there any like horror stories? Did you guys get into that before I got on? Like really bad
learning experiences, Charlotte. Learning experiences.
Another freaking growing opportunity.
Yeah, I can tell one. We had one client who gave us a file, and we did a print proof on it, and she approved it, and we produced her book, and then she got her book, and there were mistakes in it, and she wanted to know how that could be corrected. And the only way to correct it is to reprint the book. So, once you've approved a job, you own it. So I'm afraid you really need to do your proofing before you run the book and not afterwards.
And this isn't a horror story, but it's a mistake I made, which I fully confess to. Uploaded a book, and I was going to change the cover. So I had asked you guys to do 50 copies, and then, it was all email and not very formal, and I didn't make a phone call. So, they went ahead and printed all 200 copies, which was fine. It wasn't such a huge error or misstep because it's the same interior. But that's another thing. That's kind of why I characterize this as how to communicate with your printer, because just you guys are so responsive. Just to get on the phone and ask them anything. No question is too dumb, right, Manny?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'm a quite open book when it comes to that stuff.
When people phone, do they end up and start kind of begin the process? Because you are really friendly, and I loved visiting your facility. I'm not going to say that again. But everyone that I've met at HF Group is just hardworking, friendly, responsive, etc. Are the two of you the two people most people speak with, or are there other people that who deal with the public and who deal with new publishers? And what would you recommend to someone who's publishing independently, or who's writing independently, and they want you to bind and print their book? Any particular recommendations?
If I were to suggest it, I would tell them, especially if they're not sure which way they want to do, a hardcover or softcover book, I would always tell them, go to a bookstore, see what you like, what the feel, the look, the paper, hardcover, softcover. I mean, there's so many different examples, and some of them are cookie cutters, but others are not. So my suggestion is always see what you like, see what you want to do, and have a plan B. That way you could always, fall back to something if it's ended up being too expensive or too pricey for you also. That's my main concern. When it comes to communication, me and Paul, yes, are the main people, but we also have another team behind us. We also have Sandy Winnett, who handles our edition binding also. We also have Catherine, Maria, and Pat, who are also part of our main office with our library and our edition and demand stuff also. And, I mean, feel free to call any one of us. We're always available for anybody.
You guys are great.
Till we tell you no on something.
Stopping by in Charlestown is always an option, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm always here anytime after 5:36. Feel free to come in. I'm here till about 4:35 in the afternoon, sometimes later. Paul is, always burning the candle, so he's always here.
Right. I know he is. I have found him there.
And I know
meeting down there on Saturday, our board meeting, and then we'll have our members. We're going to, just let our members know that they can drop in at 12:30 and meet the board and possibly give a tour of the plant if Paul or somebody is up for that. So, there will be some of us down there. But I think the other thing I was going to ask you, IPNE members and other independent publishers who get to know us, could we do hangouts with you and just do a little like maybe show the book, the layout or something? Would that work for you? Because some of our members are up in Vermont and they just can't
come down.
in person.
Yeah, no problem. I don't have an issue with that. I'm always available to talk. I like talking. I think Paul does too. I don't think he minds doing some of this stuff either. But yeah, absolutely. I don't see why not.
Yeah, cool. Well, that might be an option for people, and it's always helpful if you can see the person and see, get their body language and, see their layout or their actual physical thing, even if it's on video.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I have to say, every time I go into the office to pick up, even if I'm rushing and it's pouring rain out and it's Friday night and everybody's rushing home and I'm late because I got lost in traffic or something like that, the atmosphere in the office is always so positive and so helpful. And I just wanted to thank you for running a business like that, because I know I've been there and I've been really stressed out and confused, and within 5 minutes I know it's okay and it's safe and I can get things done. So but that counts for a lot for a business. That's really important.
I went in after hours or without Manny or Paul one time and just took some pictures, and I was asking people how they liked working there, and they really responded positively. So that's always a good test, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're a family-owned and operated business, and we, as I said at the beginning, we love our products. And it's a business you have to love or you wouldn't be in, and we do love it.
You sleep with the books like I do when I get a new book.
Well, you're reading late at night and doze off. I guess we do end up sleeping with our books, don't we?
And then they clunk onto the floor, and you wake up in a start. Oh, there's my book. Okay. Well, any other comments from anyone, or shall we close the broadcast? And
Just want to thank you guys for having us today.
well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do this about every 6 months or sooner, because there's just so much more to cover. And maybe if anybody's listening and they want to have a separate conversation, we do have our office hours every day. It's Thursday, where we have our Ask the Experts series. And next week we're going to be talking to two amazing book designers, which I think there'll be, Manny and Paul, if you want to join us, it might be good contacts for you to have too. One of us is a board member, and one is an award-winning book designer.
Cool. Yeah, we'd love to.
Definitely.
Are you talking, Charlotte, about Glenn, who made the book about designing books?
Glenna Collette and Jenny Putnam.
Wow.
And,
I have to say, Glenna's book about designing books is incredible. It's really incredible.
She got from what I think she got a finalist or maybe a winning.
I wouldn't be at all surprised. It's just a really brilliant book on designing books. And
then we do have one scheduled for the 11th, but the following Thursday, the 18th, we have Chris Keneally of the Copyright Clearance Centers, so copyrights and contracts. And then on the 25th, oh God, my brain is going to mush. Maybe Chris is on the 25th, and then on March 17th, we have IBPA President Angela Bowl.
Wow, cool. Okay, we just got a question coming in, a real quickie. When you print the review copy before printing the order, and how much does that cost, or does it depend on, obviously it would depend on whether it has photographs and pictures and
the first review copy is actually included in your price. If there are any other changes that and you need to see another print copy, then will be an additional cost. If they're comfortable with just seeing like a soft proof email of what the file they sent in to us, then there's no cost in that aspect. But if they need to actually see another print, then there'll be additional cost.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think that's it.
Great. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank
you, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And then we
stop broadcast.
Stop the broadcast. Yeah.